some of the issues you want him to respond to. So those are the things that we're going to be having this morning. It's going to be very, very interactive. It's 49 minutes now on the top of the hour 9. So begin to send me those questions on 0548 501 584. We'll be streaming live on Facebook. And so if you're joining us, you can watch us live on Facebook, Orange 1079. When you watch, then you share, so other people can also have the benefit of taking part of the conversation. So join us on Facebook on 0548 501 584. 0548 501 584. And you can also watch us live on Facebook. Now, on the Nigerian conversation, let's listen to this last view that has come through.
Good morning to your listeners, and then to you, the panel over there. I think for Ghana to get a third force, we have to detach from tribal politicking, because in Ghana some tribes feel like one of the two big political parties here are part of their tradition, so they care less about policies and whatever. All they know is it's election time. We are going to represent our tribes. With Pakwesi Nduma, I think he lost it himself, because at a point in time in 2016, he threw his weight to Nana Addo. So such a person, Ghanaians will not entrust their loyalty behind him, because showing your weight behind somebody who has come to disappoint, what do you think the people will think of you? I think they can still be a third force, but we have to break away from tribal politicking and then politicking which has to deal with victimizing people who come out to think otherwise from what the normal going on.
Okay, so that is his view there. Okay, I think we'll wrap up on that conversation and then move on to engage the majority leader, also the member of parliament for the people of Swami constituency, and he's the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs. Leader.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I hope you're doing well.
By God's grace and the kind kisses of lovers.
I see. Now, Leader, a lot of things have happened in Parliament ever since you reconvened on February 7th. Can you tell us what has happened thus far, and when will you be adjourning?
Well, as you do know, we reconvened on February 7th. It's the first time since this Fourth Republic that the first meeting of a session is happening in February. Normally, we reconvene in January, but we had to defer the reconvening because of a few developments. And then, so we added 2 more weeks. Originally, we were to reconvene on 24th of January, later rescheduled to 31st, then to 7th. But we'll try to make, what it means is that the meeting is shortened by 2 weeks. Instead of the 10 weeks that we're going to meet, we're now going to have to meet for just 8 weeks. And we're into our 4th week now. So we'll make the best out of it. But as you may, will be adjourning on the 31st of March, which will be the last Friday before Good Friday. And Good Friday is on the 7th of April. So that is the tentative date that we've decided to adjourn. If there should be any additional work that may have to be done before we adjourn, and we're not able to do it by that Friday, 31st, worst case scenario, maybe we may go to Monday, Tuesday, which will be, I guess, 3rd and 4th or so. Is it the 2nd and 3rd or 3rd and 4th of April?
Okay. Now, when you reconvened, even before you reconvened, the NDC did something a lot of people considered to be a bit unusual for an opposition party to change their front bench in parliament. These are leaders who have led the caucus for, close to 7 years now. They were changed, and members of parliament belonging to that side of the house began to complain that they were not engaged. They felt that it was a coup that has been orchestrated by the NDC in parliament. And some people even said that the reasons, the unspoken reasons, is because you particularly, you were in very, good relationship with the minority leader. So people began to question his loyalty to the party. So it looks as if you've contributed to the sacking or to the changing of Haruna Iddrisu. Are you happy about that?
Well, I consider what happened not to be the best. I thought maybe if they had to change their leaders, the party outside would have engaged the party in parliament. Some consultation. But can you also fault them? What is the provision in their constitution? Their constitution allows them to do what they did. Their constitution is the one that provides for the leaders, the party outside parliament, to constitute the leadership of the party in parliament. And that exactly is what even happened when they had to constitute the leadership of Haruna Iddrisu, James Aveji, Kluche, Muntaka Mohammed, Mubarak, Ahmed Ibrahim, and Comfort Doyo. It was the party that constituted that group. It was not the party in parliament, right? So if they use the same mechanism to do what they did, can anybody really fault them? Constitutionally, you cannot fault them. But going forward, I think that it will be important for them, even if they have to do that, to engage the party in parliament. They should be consultative. So to me, that is. As for the reasons that they gave, which includes, as you said, people saying that, some of them saying that I was too close to Haruna, or Haruna was too close.
You were in a very cozy relationship with Haruna and the minority. And
I was in a cozy relationship with Bagbin when he was a majority leader. Mm-hmm. Yes?
And people didn't question his loyalty to the party.
People didn't question his loyalty to the party. You remember when,
at the time he was majority or minority leader?
Majority leader.
So maybe because they were in government, they didn't see that.
And then I remember even when his primaries, we constituted a group and I went to
campaign for him?
To engage his people. It was not an open campaign, but we had gone to do a program on behalf of Parliament. And we met his constituents, and we spoke to them. I told them that Bagbin is not the only person who can represent them in Parliament. However, where he has risen to, if you want to change him, you must bring a person of equal stature. His own party secretary wanted to contest him. And you look at maybe the educational qualification of that person who wanted to oust him because he was in charge of the delegates, he was in constant communication with them, so he thought he could use it to his advantage and get rid of. I thought it was a bit unfortunate. So we went more or less to campaign for him. And it's one of the reasons why he got retained. Did anybody question that? I was a minority leader, and because I take keen interest in legislation, the Attorney General at the time, Betty Modi Drusu, he wants something done. He would just walk to my office, throw it at me, leader. Everybody says, I mean, laws that they wanted to make, I'll be handling that. for God and country, right? At the time, I was not too close to the NDC. I was not in a cozy relationship with the NDC. Cletus Abuka succeeded, he succeeded Bagbe. Cletus, to this day, he will come to Kumasi and calls me. Leader, where are you? I'm in Kumasi. Come pick me up and then let's go to somewhere that you can give me guinea fowl. That's the extent of my working relationship with Cletus. Last year was he was celebrating his 70th birthday, and he invited me to go to Zebila with him. Unfortunately, something happened and I couldn't go. And because of me, Cletus had to postpone his 70th birthday.
Oh, he did?
We couldn't go. So we said, okay, we'll do it this year. And unfortunately, the events playing out there will not allow us to go. But anytime, and we had some discussion about this, anytime there's a cooling off period, we will go and have the celebration there. That's the extent of my working relationship with Cletus.
For a lot of people watch...
This man, Haruna.
Yes.
I go to Tamale. He comes to pick me. He says, sir, where are you staying? I'm staying in this hotel. No, that hotel is run down. Let me take you to this much more spacious hotel. He takes me there. In the evening, he organizes TZ. He brings it. And he and I are eating from the same pot.
And then when you come to Parliament, it looks as if you're fighting. Why is that so?
When he comes to Parliament, I also organize TZ in my office. He comes and I remember there was one time that Suhini even followed him. You want to go and eat, but let's go. You say it's TZ, let's go. So Suhini, for instance, followed. And all of us, we put our hands in the same pot and ate. That is, you see, you are the majority leader. You are the leader of government business. You must cultivate a very good working relationship with the minority leader, right? And have time to explain things to him. We have a minority group and not an opposition group.
For some of the members of the party, they believe that relationship is likely to affect the judgment of the minority leader to the extent that he's unable to really disagree with you or to really represent the party's position as vehemently as possible.
You just spoke to me, but sometimes you are seen fighting on the floor. You just made a statement.
Sometimes you vote.
You just spoke to it.
Some time ago you voted.
Yes, but you tell me that, look, this is my party's policy position. Okay. We will not agree. We will not agree. If you want to achieve, bring your troops, but we will not agree. And he will come and vehemently oppose you. Right? It doesn't mean we are fighting. As a matter of principle, he thinks that it's not good, so he opposes it. Whatever and whatever he must oppose, he opposes. So that is it. And who tells you that Atufo is an enemy to me? He's not. We are on the same committee, the finance committee, where he's a ranking member. Of course, I don't have too much time, to spare. So normally at the committee, unless something happens which requires my presence, those committee meetings, I scarcely have time to be attending the committee meetings. But when things get tough, I do attend. Atu sees me, leader the urban, building,
Oh, really?
because I'm in cabinet, maybe I have better understanding of the issues. So you call them and you are telling them that, no, this is it. But really, we didn't get it that way. Okay, but if you want us to come on board, you have to do this. You rationalize it. Is it possible? Maybe you touch, if it is finance minister, you touch base quickly with the finance minister. This is a suggestion from the minority. Can we accommodate it? And you tell them, oh, no, we can't do this. This one we can. Then we are building consensus. So that is how business is transacted in Parliament. So it doesn't mean that a person has sold out to you. It doesn't mean that at all. Let
me remind our listeners that this one we extend the show to 11 because we couldn't start on time. So we'll try and do that for you. So if you have questions, please make sure you're sending those questions on our WhatsApp number 05485011584. Now, final two issues on this. We are also learning that on the principle that you've communicated publicly that you will not seek re-election, there are moves within your party to have you removed as the majority leader. Maybe they need someone who will seek re-election with the energy, etc., etc. Is that the case?
You are telling me.
Has the president had that conversation with you?
You are telling me.
So you are unaware?
I'm not aware.
Nobody has told you that?
The president and I have not had that conversation.
And the party hasn't communicated that to you?
The party and I have not had a conversation. On the other hand, I have meetings with them. I was in cabinet last Thursday, and we had a special, the cabinet was Friday, because we were to have it Thursday, but something happened, and I told the president that we couldn't have the cabinet on Thursday, so we should push it to Friday, which is what we did. Even the Friday, the 10 o'clock that it was to start, I told them we couldn't start at 10. We should push it to 1. And lo and behold, so I have daily communication with them.
There are no attempts to remove you.
That is why I'm saying that maybe you are.
What if your party takes the route?
I didn't know that you are a prime rumor monger. I don't know that.
What if your party takes the route that NDC took, to take the decision at the headquarters and say, henceforth, Hon.Osei Kyei Mensah is no more the leader of the majority caucus?
Well, I trust that the party will do the best for the party in parliament and for our effort to retain power.
Okay. First of all, let me ask you, because of your close relationship with Haruna, is he demoralized? Has he lost interest in parliamentary? Has it affected him that much, or he's still the Haruna you know?
Oh, I mean, he's human. He's human, so it will cause some temporary dislocation. And the advice that he ought to take it easy a bit. So he traveled outside to just reinvigorate. And he came back to Parliament last Thursday. And he was his usual robust self. He contributed to a debate, and everybody saw the Haruna of old. I think he's come back much more refreshed, and he will do what he has to do for God and country.
Okay. Now, some people have also said for strategic reasons, you must have been happy when the news came that he was removed, because he is much more competitive. He's someone that is able to match you at the highest level in terms of parliamentary debate. And some people have also said that he's a lawyer. He understands the standing orders very well. He understands the Constitution. We know that you take keen interest on the Constitution. In fact, your deputy is a lawyer, but the current team are without someone like that. And so when it comes to maneuverings, when it comes to the laws and standing, you guys will have your way, and it's going to be an easy, matchup as compared to the old leaders.
Well, I'm not looking at it that way. I'm looking at how to build parliamentary democracy together, involving the majority and the minority. I don't look at point scoring, but how are you going to be able to build parliament together? You see, already the issue that you raise, people saying that, Haruna has sold out and so on and so forth, it will affect the psychology of the new people. So even if there's no point to disagree with you, they may want to disagree with you. Because the thinking outside there was that, Haruna was maybe developing a soft spot for Kyei Mensah Bonsu's team. So let's go on there to create a gridlock. And that to me would not be good for Parliament. So in analyzing the situation, I thought it wasn't the best of situations. The other thing is, you see, if you are a leader, you are supposed to be a generalist, to know a bit of something about everything. Haruna was coming up. And Haruna didn't begin yesterday. I'll tell you. Haruna, when he first came to Parliament, at the time I was a whip for the minority, for the majority. When he first came, replacing Mustafa Idris, in the evenings he would come to me, leader, but you did this, you people did this. What's the meaning? We explained to him. The following day he was at Adum radio station, using it against you. But see, he didn't want to get it wrong. You come and at least listen to you, what underpins this thing that you've done, and maybe you have a trace of his own to argue his case. He didn't want to get it wrong. I'm just saying that Haruna is not a product of yesterday. He began soon after he entered Parliament, and he's been picking up. Ato is very strong on finance, right? The other areas, he will need to up his level. You know, he has the potential. Ato has tremendous potential of climbing up. But human as he is, it will take a bit of time. Even Haruna that you mentioned, a lawyer. But when he came to arguing law, I'm not too sure that Haruna was able to defeat me in many occasions. Because and he was, anytime we travel, you sleep with the Constitution. That is why, because I'm always carrying my Constitution, even in flight. We are going through it to know the defects, the combined effects of some provisions, and so on and so forth. Right? So you are very strong, and that is why people think that Kyei Mensah Bonsu is a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a trained lawyer. I'm not a certified lawyer. But because you make laws, you have to be on top of lawmaking, and also understand the foundations of the law in Ghana, which is the Constitution and other decrees and so on and so forth. Right? You can't do without that. Sometimes, I will tell you, sometimes the lawyers amongst us, they even take a lot of things for granted because they think that he's a trained lawyer. So it comes to the floor. You're matching the person in a debate, and some of them, many times, you see what happens. You see the winner and the loser. It's because he thinks that, well, I appreciate the law. This man is not a trained lawyer. So he thinks that he can argue but it's not like that. Even if you're a trained lawyer, you must always be embedded in the law. But I'm just saying that Ato, he has the potential of climbing up. I'm not sure that people saying that their front bench doesn't have a lawyer would affect them if the people there up their level. It's possible. As I said, I'm not a trained lawyer, but we had lawyers under me, right? But when it came to points of law, they will yield to me because you are the leader. And oftentimes, maybe you are telling them that, can you look at this provision in the Constitution? Can you look at the standing orders and put the two together to argue your case? I mean, that's how I am with my own colleagues, right? So Ato would have a bit of difficulty initially. I mean, replacing Haruna initially may pose some difficulty. But as I'm saying, he has the potential of climbing up. And once he does, I think he'll be a very good and strong person.
Now, I believe that some people within your party some people believe that in this current parliament, you guys have taken some decisions that more or less...
Can you repeat? I didn't hear.
I'm saying that there are some people within your party who believe that the current parliament or majority in parliament have taken certain decisions that to some extent is seeking to hurt their own party. For instance, the move by some MPs belonging to the majority side to call for the resignation of Ken Ofori-Atta. And we've also heard you publicly speaking against domestic debt action program. You said that it's going to affect the middle class. You believe that is something that is really going to affect the middle class. And some of your colleagues have also had cause, like your majority whip, has had cause to complain about the domestic debt. Some people say what's happening seems to be unusual for a majority caucus to be publicly speaking against decisions or policies of their own government. So there are some within your party that look at it and say, no, this parliament, it looks as if they are doing things against us, not for us. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, the resignation, the call for the resignation of the Minister of Finance, really it was something that a group in the majority had raised, and they had said that they were concerns that they were ferrying from their party, from their constituents. Now, one Sunday it was, when they went to have a meeting in the house of one of them, they called me to the meeting. One of them called me to the meeting. Because at the time, I didn't know anything such thing was happening. And my whip also didn't know, not my deputy leader. None of us in leadership knew. Apparently, they were doing this behind us. So one of them called me and said, even though he's part of that meeting, he was getting jitters that some people want to take it to some level. So he invited me to the meeting. At the time, I was not in Accra. I was in the Eastern region. It was a Saturday evening that he called me. And we had elected the national executives, and the national executives needed some orientation, and they had invited me as a resource person to that meeting that held at Rock City in the Eastern region, between Impraeso and Nkwetia. So it was the invitation to me that caused me to come to Accra. They said they were meeting at 10 o'clock, and I said to them that I couldn't come at 10 o'clock. If I have to be there, maybe 1 o'clock. And they said, okay, in that case, they will reschedule the meeting to 12, so that by the time I got there, all of them would be there, which is what happened. So I got there, and I listened to them. About 84, that day there were about 47 MPs there. But I was told that 84 of them, of the majority caucus, had subscribed to that meeting and indeed appended their signatures for the call for the resignation of the finance minister. It was a bit scary. So then when I went, I needed to manage the group. I told them that, okay, I've heard what they've said. I'll ferry their concerns to the party and also to the president. But in the meantime, they should be conscious of what was happening. One, the finance minister was the lead person in our engagement with the IMF. And certainly we needed to get somewhere before we could bring the budget. So they should lift their feet off the accelerator pedal for a while. Let him be able to do this with the peace of mind. And also, because he's leading it, to then enable him to present the budget, because the discussions were going to lead to the presentation of the budget. And after the presentation of the budget, we would then need an act of parliament to back the budget, which is the Appropriations Act. I said, we need all these things. So I'll plead with you to slow down. Not all of them were happy, but many of them appreciated the issues that I raised. So I went to the president and told him that. So we had then to meet the group. And when we met the group, the president told them exactly what I told the president to tell them.
So I want, did the president say, let him finish with all of these, and then I'll sack him? Or let him finish with all of these, and then we'll come back to the table?
The president did not use the words, let him finish and I'll sack him.
What did he say?
Oh, he said, we will attend to this. I'm quoting him. We will attend to these matters that you have raised.
Okay.
When you allow him to finish with the discussions, the engagement with the IMF, and also to submit the budget to Parliament. The president even didn't talk about appropriations. It was I that added, when we met them again, that maybe the president forgot about the appropriations, but that we need to have the Appropriations Act passed as well. You know, and we had a meeting, a caucus meeting, and then strategically at the caucus, I said, look, all of us the stand that they are taking, who is against it. Only 2 people said no, even though they are not against the call for the ouster. They are against the press conference that they went to hold.
Okay. So all of you were in support.
So, no, you have a group. As I said, 84 had submitted to this.
Yes.
Your number is 138. What does it mean?
Majority of you
Majority within the majority
believe that should be the course to be
and
taken.
if you are the leader, what do? You say that to hell with you.
But personally, did you agree with them?
I said that, and when we had the caucus, as I said, all
Yes.
the people were not too much in support of what they're doing. And that day, the number that attended the caucus meeting was about 105 or so. And so we had overwhelming majority supporting this, right? So I said, look, the caucus has aligned. However, we must wait for 1, 2, 3. And then we went to the president, and the president told us about the same thing, right? So that's where we are. Today, the issue, we had some meeting after we reconvened this time, and somebody brought the matter up. And I said, look, today is not on the agenda. Let's finish, we'll have time to discuss that matter. You guys went to the constituency and came with this concern. You've had another opportunity to go back to the constituency. We have reconvened. Is it the same thing? Or what? Or there's some relaxation? So when we have the meeting, we'll then take a position and then have a meeting with the president subsequent to that. So that's where we are.
So let's talk about the management of the economy, because it is also the reason why we've had to deal with domestic debt action program. The reaction has not been good. A lot of individual bondholders have really complained about the processes. In fact, we saw pensioner bondholders, picketing at the finance ministry, and for them to be exempted in the dying numbers of the whole process. Is it true that you've said that domestic debt action program ought to be relooked at because you think it's going to hugely affect the middle class?
When we were on recess, the individual bondholders came to meet Parliament, the leadership of Parliament. And the prime concern they raised was the fact that government had not engaged them. And if you heard me, I said nothing can substitute for engagement. So we need to engage them, because the underpinnings of any democratic governance is that what concerns all of us should be decided by all of us, right? So because this matter affected the interests of the individual bondholders, the least we could have done was to have engaged them ahead of time. Some engagement had gone on, but I would admit that it wasn't comprehensive enough. And that is why I said so, that we needed, and the we included me as government, ought to have maybe done much more deeper consultation before we came to this. So that was what I said, and I said government would need to engage. Even members of parliament, not too many of us understood what really was going on.
But I thought there was an arrangement for Parliament to engage the Ministry of Finance in some of these matters.
That's what I'm saying. So you see,
so the ministry didn't engage you?
Discussions. The minister didn't have too much time to have these discussions.
Okay.
With the MP separately. That is the reason why I called that the minister should come and meet the caucus, which he did. And when he met the caucus, the exclamation was that, oh, really? So it's not as bad as some of us thought. Some of the MPs, many of the MPs did not even appreciate what was going on, right? And then ultimately, he had to come to Parliament and explain matters to us. And when he explained, a lot of people then appreciated what was being done, right? Some people were raising matters of policy. Somebody said, oh, but okay, this one, the individual bondholders, you guys could have stopped, exacting this on them. And maybe as an alternative, government could have said that, okay, this year, given our special circumstances, we're not going to engage in any capital expenditure. That is one choice, but it's a policy choice. If you are doing roads and you abandon the roads, say, this year I'm not doing it. They've worked up to some point. Next year you go to continue. Next year you do double job. And the works may perhaps have to increase by maybe 30, 40, perhaps 50%, right? So the government goes through all these policy choices and says that, okay, let me do this. And for those of them, you see, at the heart of this whole arrangement was the fact that, colleagues, come on board. We are not in normal times. You have this investment at this rate. What I'm going to do as a government, given the circumstances of these times, is that now the yield is 18.5% on your bond. I would plead with you that where we are, we can't pay the 18.5%. But we are bringing it down to 15%. What it means is that we are going to lose 3.5% per year on your investment. Now, some of you are looking at 10 years, 15 years. But I'll tell you that 5 years, if you agree, 5 years, I'll pay you this much. If after the 5 years you want to reinvest, it will be for you to decide. But for now, within these 5 years, this is what I'm prepared to do. If you don't want this new arrangement, you want to opt out, you can opt out. However, given the turbulence outside, the high interest rate and so on and so forth, which I'm working at to bring down, if you stepped out there, you don't agree, and maybe you go and you want to trade your coupons, if you're not fortunate, you may not even get 50% of the face value. In that case, if you want to do that, I will not disturb you. We can do that. So there's no compulsion. But if you go out and the weather is not good enough, and you're not able to get the face value of your coupon, then you don't come and blame me. But if you wait, if you join and wait until 4 years, I'll pay you this. 4 years, I'll pay you half of your investment, and the following year, I'll pay you the other half of the investment at 15%. That's all that there is to it in this DDE. But people didn't understand, and there was a lot of talk outside there, including the picketing. Do you know that after the minister had come to Parliament and explained, many of the domestic bond holders then went and showed appreciation to the minister that, okay, we didn't understand what was involved. What it means is that the engagement that I spoke about ought to have come earlier. If it had, the picketing and the loudness of the noise outside perhaps would not have come.
Now, I've asked our listeners to send us questions. One has sent us a question. The reason I'm reading this at this point in time is because it relates to what we are talking about. He says that the DDEP was occasioned because of the fact that our debt is currently unsustainable. We are engaging China to see if they can grant us debt forgiveness. The argument by government is that largely we are here because of Russia, Ukraine war, and COVID. And he wants me to find out from you, don't you think internally we ourselves have contributed to our current economic state, and we cannot wholly blame it on COVID and Russia?
Oh, certainly. I agree that we can't blame everything on COVID and Russia. We must admit to some of our own shortcomings as well. The defects in governance we must admit. Why? You see, every government in this country gets elected on account of its manifesto promises and pledges, right? And you come, it's like your social contract with the people, and you are implementing your manifesto programs and policies, right? Which you eventually turn around to foist on the people. And I'm saying this because, you see, as a country, we don't even have a long-term development plan. The Constitution obligates succeeding governments to continue to the largest extent possible the policies and programs and projects begun by previous administrations. We're not doing that. We're not doing that because, you see, MPP comes to power. They think that the manifesto pledge commitment project that the NDC is doing is not my manifesto pledge. I will not continue. The abandoned programs and projects go waste. NDC comes, they do the same thing. Where then are we situating the constitutional imperative, which provides that you should follow the programs, policies, and projects of your predecessor administration? You remember President Mills's time? Mills was continuing many of the projects begun by Kufuor. And Tony Edu came to say that he should abandon what he was doing. Otherwise, at the end of the day, he will have nothing to show. Then people will claim, ownership of all those programs and projects that he was trying to implement, right? I'm saying to us that if we had a long-term development plan that the parties will be weaving their constitutions around, then you will be obligated under the circumstance to follow and complete programs and projects begun by your predecessor, because it's the same national plan that we are all following. We may just differ in the details. Now, so it is a lot of wastage in the system. Two, because of
Leader, if you say there's a lot of waste, what exactly do you mean? Corruption in public?
The issue that I'm related to, abandoning of projects and programs.
Okay. So it leads
and you continue your own. The second issue has to do with of the programs and policies. Because we don't have a real National Development Planning Commission, right? Who are not coming with any long-term development plan to guide all of us. The economic planning unit of our governance is not strong. You know, we used to have a ministry called Ministry of Finance
and Economic Planning.
Economic Planning. What's the name of the ministry now? The ministry now is simply Ministry of Finance.
We had a separate ministry for planning, but
where's the ministry?
We've discarded it.
That's it. That's the point I'm making. President Mahama Mills's time, we did away with the economic planning unit. So we used to call them the Ministry of Finance. We decoupled the economic planning and constituted a new ministry called the Ministry for Planning. Now, with the ouster of Professor Jambafo, that ministry is no longer there. He's now heading NDPC, the National Development Planning Commission. So I'm just saying, if we had that unit would be responsible for the economic analysis, the planning analysis of the loans that you are taking and so on and so forth. And Parliament is also blamable. Because Parliament, we don't even have a committee in charge of economic development or planning.
So it means that personally you are failed then, because you are. It means that individually you are failed because you lead.
I'm doing it.
You have failed.
I have failed.
If we do not have, for instance, Parliament does not have an economic plan.
How often haven't you heard me talk about this?
So why don't you act on it instead of talking about it?
How do I act as an individual? Look,
why don't you move for something to be done in that direction?
I have.
Nobody is listening to you.
And the review of our standing orders. I have proposed, and fortunately, my colleagues, most of them have bought into it. So now we're going to have a committee on economic development, right, in Parliament. So in marking the 30th year celebration, remember, I spoke to these matters, that we should bring the review of our standing orders to a closure. It includes this. So you see, these borrowings that we have been doing to develop, there's no way of really benchmarking and marking ourselves as to what direction these borrowings are taking us and so on and so forth. And that's why I'm saying that I admit that we can blame the COVID, we can blame the Russian-Ukraine war, but we should also blame ourselves. Colleagues, the NDC, but you came and you met a debt stock of 122 billion, and now it's close to 500 billion. Yes. Admitted. Mm-hmm. Admitted. The NDC came, the debt stock was how much? It was 9.86, right? And they took it to 122 billion. Do you know what? Now, if you do the year-on-year analysis of the debt stock, by the time we got to 122 billion, don't forget, one day came, the cedi to dollar equivalent was 1 cedi 10 pesos to $1. So the 122, do the debt stock analysis over the 8 years. You realize that the NDC added about $47 billion to the debt stock. Today, the 500 billion, check it. If you dollarize it, you realize that the MPP has also added close to 36 billion. So it is in dollar terms. What is happening now, in spite of...
But you promised that you do way better than them, that they were incompetent, they were mismanaging the economy. So now you seek to be comparing yourselves to them.
Mm-hmm. And then it's up there. It's scary. When you dollarize it, then you realize that the NDC added more to the debt stock than the MPP has. It doesn't mean that I'm justifying it. I'm just saying that we should be careful. As for the blame game, anybody can do that.
Leader, because of time...
At the base of it,
it's the structural problems.
It's a structural problem.
Let's deal with that, because we don't have a lot of that. You presented a speech in Parliament, which is, a lot of people were saying, yeah, what the man said, he said all the good things, all the right things. We'll come to those specifically. You've complained about the size of government. You think that we need to put a cap on members of Parliament, all of those things. Currently, do you think the size of government is too huge?
Well, it's climbed down considerably. Remember, it was in the region of 122. Now it's about 84, right? I still think that it could climb down again, honestly.
Have you spoken to the president about it? That, Mr. President, can we reduce the size of the...
It's not about this president.
No, but you are serving in this...
I'm saying, it's not about this president. All presidents. Listen, the reason why I'm saying this is this. In the Constitution of the Republic, right, you look at Article 76 of the Constitution. What does it provide? Article 76 of the Constitution provides, and with your kind indulgence, I want to read. It says, 76, there shall be a cabinet which shall consist of the president, the vice president, and not less than 10 and not more than 19 ministers of state. The cabinet. The cabinet, 2 says, the cabinet shall assist the president in the determination of general policy of government. So that's the work of the cabinet. Determination of the policy of government. We come to 78. 78 says, ministers of state shall be appointed by the president with the prior approval of parliament from among members of parliament or persons qualified to be elected as members of parliament, except that the majority of ministers shall be appointed from among members of parliament. And then 2 says, the president shall appoint such number of ministers of state as shall be necessary, as may be necessary for the efficient running of the state. Mm-hmm. So ministers, your prime responsibility to assist the president in running the state efficiently. What it means is that you're appointed to a sector, right? You must ensure that that sector is run efficiently to contribute to the efficient running of the greater whole. Now, cabinet, that is in charge of the determination of policy, as captured in 76. The number is 19. Now, if a minister is bringing anything to Parliament, whether agreement or bill or whatever, it must be accompanied by a memorandum. The memorandum is the policy that accompanies the bill or the agreement or whatever, right? Now, you can only append your signature to that memorandum if you're a cabinet minister.
A deputy cannot.
A deputy cannot.
So your argument
No
is that
minister of state who is not a cabinet minister can do that. What does it suggest to you? It should suggest to you that the Constitution is prescribing the ceiling of ministries
to 19.
to 19. That's my considered.
So we do not need more than 19 ministers.
That is my considered opinion. I'm not saying that we don't need more than 19 ministers.
But for the efficient running of the state,
Yes.
we need.
Maybe you may have, after the 19 ministries, you may have 1 or 2 ministers of state who perhaps their functions may be cross-cutting to the extent that if something happens that you can't put under a particular sector, that person may come in to assist the president. So you may have 1 or 2 ministers of state. So if we had 19 ministries, 19 ministers, plus maybe 1 or 2, as I've said, it will take the number to 21. And you appointed deputy ministers. To be honest, there are some ministries that necessarily may have 1 or 2 deputies. For instance, you have the Ministry for Lands and Natural Resources. You may have a deputy who may be in charge of lands or one in charge of natural resources. The Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, you can have 1 in charge of economic planning, 1 in charge of finance, right? And the minister himself will be the overarching, boss. Or perhaps we can even have a minister who is very strong on finance, and we give him a deputy who is in charge of economic planning. And then we can have just 2 there, or maybe a maximum of 3.
So in your estimation, we don't need more than 40 ministers then?
So in that regard, if you have the 19
Yes.
plus maybe
All of those deputies.
one will be 38. But I've told you that there are some ministries that may require
2 deputies.
So, for instance, maybe altogether, you can have maybe about 45, there are about 48.
So Ghana can do with 45 ministers.
45, maximum 50 ministers and deputy ministers. And of course, you come now to add the regional ministers, right? So if you have 50 and you have 16 regional ministers, it will add to 66. My thinking is that if we organize well, we don't have to go beyond 70.
You've said that
ministers and deputy ministers.
You've said
everything considered.
You've said that this is not a problem that the current president is superintending over.
Yes.
But I want to ask you directly: have you also had cause to complain about this to the current president? That, Mr. President, I think we can do with 70 ministers.
You don't expect whatever discussions that go on between me and the president to be made open.
But clearly the president hasn't listened to you.
You don't. If I have a discussion with the president in his closet, you want me to come out and disclose?
No, the question is, have you had that conversation with him?
Don't lead me into temptation.
Have you had that conversation with him?
Don't lead me into temptation.
Then it means the president didn't listen to you. He thinks that he decided.
I am saying, don't lead me into temptation.
Okay.
You are drawing your own conclusions from matters that I have not
Now,
responded to.
apart from that, let's do the conversation on the cost of our election, because you've also complained about that. The last time you delivered a speech in KNUST,
yes,
and you said, quote, "The country needs a head of state and government. Therefore, at any given time, we shall have a president or prime minister."
Yes.
And you were attributing it to a research done by CDD that said that for you to run to become a member of parliament is going to cost you around $600,000 or so.
Yes.
And for president, about $50 million. Now, the question is, there are those who say, we attempted this in the Buzia era, when Edward Akufo-Addo was the president or the head of state. Buzia was the prime minister. Some people felt it didn't really work out well. And as a country, maybe
How didn't it work out well? The system was truncated, but what was wrong with it?
Was it
Did anybody blame the ceremonial
the structure?
Mm-hmm. Nobody. Nobody blamed the prime minister that that arrangement was wrong. Nobody did. And don't forget, when the Constituent Assembly came to write the 1979 Constitution, a lot of discussion went on into it as to whether we needed to continue with the prime ministerial or Westminster system, or to go back to the Nkrumah's era and have a strongman president. If you ask me, my preference is for a prime minister. Why? Because the World Bank study, apart from what CDD has shown, the World Bank study indicates to us that small unitary countries don't require presidential systems, because according to them, it is much more susceptible to corruption. You see, so we must be careful. Me, I'm the majority leader now. Let's assume that we were running a Westminster system. And according to the CDD...
You become the prime minister.
I become the prime minister. According to the CDD, I would have spent an average of 600,000.
I see.
Right? Winning and then leading the party and becoming the prime minister. But now they are saying that the figure, the reviewed figure that the CDD has thrown out, is that the previous one, the other one that they mentioned, 50 million, was in respect of 2016 elections. And they are saying the 2020 elections, the presidential candidates spent about $100 million. I shudder to think of what will happen in the 2024 elections.
So, leader, if a member of parliament spends $100,000,
not 100,000, they said 600,000.
600,000, and he goes to parliament.
Yes.
What do you think happens? Do you find ways to recoup your investment?
Ask me, or I should be asking you.
No, but I remember, but I am not.
It is one reason why we are corrupting the system.
So the corruption is because of these amount that members of parliament spend before they go to parliament.
You know, nobody is in politics as a Father Christmas. I keep saying this.
But what happens if you decide not to pay?
The person wins and he spends $600,000, and some people even mortgage their houses to get to parliament, and he gets there, and you make him a minister. He awards contract. You think you will not find a way to make good the money that he has lost? We are humans. And that's why I'm saying that we are pushing ourselves to the precipice. And in this endeavor, political parties also have a stake. Because at the end of every 4 years, their sluice gates are opened, and it's an all-comers game. Let's go, and you have people coming. Let's go and ask this man. Where is a mute member of parliament. He's not talking in parliament. He's not representing our interests. Let's go and remove him. Where roads. He's not done our roads. He's not done a hospital. He's not done schools. He's not giving us water. He's not giving us electricity. Let's go and remove him. And they lead up to parliamentary primaries. You see what happens. People who want to come and oust members, the incumbent members of parliament. Some of them go and rent, they go and rent road construction equipment.
I see.
And they start developing roads. Oh, this man hasn't done so. When they finish and they get elected, did they do it again? He comes to parliament and realizes that, oh, so what I didn't know what the member of parliament's functions really are. So those of them who do that, when they become members of parliament, do they continue the exercise?
Most often, we, the citizens or the electors, complain or criticize you politicians that you are corrupt, that you are interested in your own benefits, etc. Would you also say that we have to share in the blame that we are also the ones who take these money?
Absolutely.
So we are involved.
The citizens are also involved.
No, but the MP can decide not to pay.
Look, how many MPs in their quiet moments don't have citizens visiting them to, for them to give them money to do one or two things? My son is at the hospital. I can't afford. I have to pay this. For humanitarian reasons, you look over your shoulder, oh, really, what's happening? Okay, I don't have the amount that you are looking for. You're asking that it requires 50,000. I don't have 50,000. But maybe I can support you with 10,000. maybe I can give you 5,000. Because don't forget, so many people have lined up. The another person is about the education of the child. He comes to him. Another person is something is about rent. I don't have money. My husband has lost his job. I was into this, and now I've been using to feed myself. So my working capital is gone. Now they are throwing. The landlord is throwing out my. Can you assist? Members of Parliament, they are kicking their heels to be able to attend to one or two problems of constituents. I mean, some of them in their earlier life maybe were performing these humanitarian activities. But you become a member of Parliament, you become a minister, and it multiplies 10-fold, 20-fold, 100-fold, right? Sometimes people ask you for money, you're hard up. You tell them, is it the idea? And he doesn't believe you.
They think that you...
They think that you are lying to them.
So why don't you keep it that way? What's the consequence of not giving those amounts?
Sometimes you don't have.
So if you don't have and you don't give, what happens to you? Why can't you allow...
The man thinks that he must submit himself to another elections. And in the meantime, the person who wants to come and dislodge him, MP ni timu den. So ko ama we bia. Ni timu den. Look, it's a guy woman, right? I remember some time back when road development had not started in my constituency, and the DCE for Afija Kwabre was fortunate enough to have the one road at Afrancho, which is my father's home village, Afrancho after Kronom. They did one, road in the township. There were two roads, one diagonal one and the other one leading to Bronco. And then we had people saying that, Kyei Mensah Bonsu is scared the man of family swameno. Also, they are quite right, and that started another rumor that they had given me money to do that, taking it to my father's home village. I wouldn't want to use it at Bremai or Kronom or Macro. So all these matters also come in. And that's why sometimes I say that we need the NCC to up their game in explaining these matters to the citizenry. So it's not a fair world as far as the members of Parliament are concerned. But I'm saying the parties also need to look at their own. If you want to build a strong parliament, the parties need to look at their various constitutions.
Let's now talk about two final issues before we go. In your presentation in Parliament commemorating the 30th anniversary, you said something about Parliament itself. You said, and I quote, "We need a new constitutional order that will prevent the constant increase in the numbers of the seats in Parliament. We need a new constitutional order that will put a cap in the numbers of ministers." Okay, so the one that relates to members of Parliament, there are those who say, as a country we grow, the population is growing. A lot of places have been developed. Some constituencies become very populous. It becomes overwhelming for the member of Parliament or for the development of the area. So you need, if you want fair representation, you need to look at your population, and then of course you increase as we go. Putting a cap might not be beneficial for the representational democracy that we want to practice. What do you want us to put a cap, or want us to, reduce or stop the increment of the seats in Parliament?
If I'm to follow you on your argument, because population is increasing, we must need to increase the number of seats in Parliament. Then every 5 years, the Chinese Parliament should be increasing in numbers. Every 5 years, the Indian Parliament should be increasing in numbers. That's not it. What we are doing here does not obtain anywhere in the world. The Constitution provides, and with your indulgence, I'll read. It says, Ghana shall be divided into as many constituencies for the purpose of election of members of parliament as the Electoral Commission may prescribe, and each constituency shall be represented by one member of parliament. 2 says, no constituency shall fall. No constituency shall fall.
The Speaker of Parliament is, I said the Speaker of Parliament, the Majority Leader is looking for the relevant constitutional provision. The leader is a very busy person, so yes.
47 provides, the boundaries of each constituency shall be such that the number of inhabitants, Article 47.3, the number of inhabitants in the constituency is as nearly as possible equal to the population quota. And it says, for the purpose of clause 3 of this article, the number of inhabitants of a constituency may be greater or less than the population quota in order to take account of the means of communication, geographical features, density of population, and area and boundaries of the regions and other administrative traditional areas. Then 5 says, the Electoral Commission shall review the division of Ghana into constituencies at intervals of not less than 7 years or within 12 months after the publication of the enumeration figures, after the holding of a census of the population of Ghana, whichever is earlier, and may, as a result, alter the constituencies. You may alter the constituencies. Now, the combined effect of all this, of these provisions in Article 47, right, is that the population, democracy is about representation.
Yes.
And representation is for people by people. So it says we should have a population quota. What's the population quota of this country? The population quota just means, and remember 2012, 2013, when we took our case to the Supreme Court, Afrejan was the chairman of the Electoral Commission. He was asked a simple question. What is the population quota of this country? He faltered. He never responded to that question. Population quota just means the number of citizens in the country, if you like, the population divided by the number of constituencies. So 275 constituencies.
Divided by 30 points.
31 million.
31 million here.
What do you get? You get something maybe in the region of about 120,000 or something. You remember, the 4 is saying that for the purpose of clause 3 of this article, the number of inhabitants of a constituency may be greater or less than the population quota, right? In order to take account of the means of communication, so on and so forth. What it means is that when you have a population quota of maybe 120,000, you then will say that, yes, this is the population quota. Every 120,000 should have one representative in parliament. But you come to Kumasi, you go to Accra, there's population density here. So then you then have a band. 120,000 is the population quota. Let's say plus or minus 10,000 or plus or minus 20,000. So that if the population increases to 140,000, you are still within. If it is 20,000 that you are using, so if it is 100,000, you are still within. But if it goes beyond 140,000, then the spill off then should go to another constituency. So then you redraw the boundaries of the constituency. That is what is required of the Electoral Commission. Not creating additional constituencies every time.
Ida will have to go, but there's a final question.
So
this listener is trying to find out, if you're spending this much because you're a member of parliament, you have this financial burden, why do you jostle for power? Why are you do almost everything? You are going all to the extreme to ensure that you go to parliament. If this is the burden and it is not looking lucrative from what you've analyzed, why do you rush and you are jostling to get to parliament? Why is that so?
No, it's about service to the nation. You think that you can render better service to people than somebody who is coming. So the person wants to do everything to, dislodge you, right? And I remember somebody said in 2016, when he wanted to come and contest, they said, Kyei Mensah Bonsu, unya competitors biya, they be a corner post. That's why he's fortunate to be there. I'm coming. I'm offering better competition. I'll dislodge him. Now, with that kind of talk, what do you tell yourself? You also assess yourself. But somebody say everything assessed. Much better a candidate and a better serve this country or my constituency than this person who's, in your view, will be a pretender. So you dig in and, more or less fight the person to fence him off, right? So those things come. But you see, sometimes, obisi abruchenye. No, so abruchenya brai.
Okay.
But then the person is also not setting up. So befia, and never be see. I mean, all manner of things come together. But you see, the base level is you're looking at where you are. Do you think you can better serve the country, the constituency, than the person who is coming in? It's the reason why, even when I announced that I'm not contesting again, my own party, the national party, the regional party, they are saying that they will not allow me to do that because they think where by God's grace I've risen to and built myself up to. They think that you can better serve, continue to serve, and maybe somebody will be coming and would want to begin from afresh. But that's a different conversation that perhaps we can talk to.
Hopefully, we'll discuss that. But thank you very much, Leader, for joining us this morning. It's been a very insightful, very interesting conversation, as always. That is the Majority Leader, Minister for Parliamentary Affairs. He's also the Member of Parliament for the People of Swami constituency. This has been an extended version of the Orange Sunrise. We're supposed to have ended at 10, but of course, for some reason, we needed to extend it so that you enjoy all of these conversations. Thank you very much for doing the listening, by the way. We'll have to go. The show was produced, as usual, by David Boache Fifa. And let me say thank you very much for joining us this morning. We have to go for now. Okay, so me? No. Okay, so let's go. Thank you very much for staying with us. We are grateful for your time.